Okay, with Hashem's help, we're beginning chapter 3 of Sefer Melachim, the book of Kings, the first one. And we're in chapter 3 here. And chapter 2 ended off that Shlomo was now the uncontested king. All of the adversaries have been done away with. They're all gone. Yoav is gone. Shimi is gone. And Shlomo has complete control over the kingdom. So now that he's taken care of the internal affairs, it's time to branch out. And the opening verse of chapter 3 is a very significant one. Vayitchaten Shlomo es Paro melech Mitzrayim. Shlomo became the mechutan, the in-law of Paro, the king of Egypt, good neighbor, and he married Paro's daughter. And he brought her to the city of David until the time where he finished building the temple, at which point they moved. So here we have in the opening verse, Shlomo is marrying in to Paro's family. He's marrying Paro's daughter. There is a big discussion over here. What's going on? The Torah says that a third generation Egyptian can marry into the Jewish people, which means, simply understood, is that if an Egyptian converts to Judaism, they may not marry into the Jewish people. They have to marry another convert or another Egyptian convert. And it's only after the third generation, after conversion, that they can marry into the Jewish people. And here you have Shlomo marrying the daughter of Paro, which seemingly is the first generation Egyptian. It should be prohibited. It's a positive commandment to marry only after the third generation, which implies the negative of not marrying before that. So what's going on over here? So first of all, we have to appreciate the political significance of this. Egypt is not just any other country. It's the one neighboring Israel. And Shlomo is trying to establish a secure country. So internally, he's worked out all the stuff, and now he starts branching out. This is going to make quite an alliance between Mitzrayim and Israel if you marry the princess of Egypt. So that's a very significant move politically. Rabbi Yaakov coming. Yeah, go ahead.
What do you mean by third generation?
Meaning the Egyptian converts, and suppose they marry another convert, and now they have a child, and then another child. That would be the third generation.
So it has to be a third generation Jewish?
Correct.
So so the first generation is the first conversion.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I will note that nowadays this doesn't apply practically because nobody's really an Egyptian anymore. In the days of Sancherib, he mixed everything up, and there's not really a distinct nation of Egypt that the Torah is referring to, at least. So he marries the daughter of Paro. The problem is, it sounds like it's prohibited. So some say it only applies to marry them while they're not converted yet. But Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky suggests as follows. He says that Hashem promised in the prophecy that Shlomo's reign will be one of peace. And I'll give you peace throughout your entire reign. And so Shlomo felt that it was his job to ensure that such a peace shall endure. And being that it came from God, he said that it's better that I should override this positive commandment to wait until the third generation. It's better I override that to ensure a lasting peace, which is a fascinating idea. And it hinges upon the fact that it's not an outright prohibition to marry a first-generation Egyptian. It's an implied prohibition. There's a mitzvah to wait till the third generation, which implies the prohibition to marry earlier. So that implied prohibition is less severe than an outright don't do it. That's a fascinating theory. Okay, so he marries the daughter of Paro, and he brings her to the city of David until he builds a house for Hashem. He didn't want to build his own palace until first building the house for Hashem. And so as long as the temple was not built, he did not move into a private palace. They were living in a temporary place in Jerusalem. But then eventually when the temple was built, he moved out of there, or he moved her out of there at least. The Mefarshim, or the Gemara, says that this is juxtaposed to the death of Shimi ben Gera. Remember Shimi, the one who cursed David, and David said to Shlomo, I want you to deal with him in your wise way. Make sure that he doesn't live out his life. And the Shlomo marrying the daughter of Paro is juxtaposed to the death of Shimi. Chazal say that Shimi ben Gera, that Benjaminite that cursed David, was actually the Rebbe of Shlomo HaMelech. He was the primary teacher of Shlomo. And Shlomo would not have dared to marry an Egyptian convert as long as his Rebbe was alive. So he waited till the death of his Rebbe to now make this political move, which is fascinating. Fascinating in so many ways. The fact that Shimi ben Gera was the Rebbe of Shlomo that's just astounding. After the tumultuous relationship with his father, the fact that he was cursing David, but eventually David welcomed him, and even, I don't know, hired him as a Rebbe for his son. Just amazing. It's also a testament to true wisdom seeking. If Shimi ben Gera was indeed a chacham, a sage, then you go to him to learn. Doesn't matter what the personal history is. You're here to learn Torah. That's what we did. So just a fascinating tidbit from Chazal. Now in verse number 2, it says, "Ra ka'am mezabchim b'bamot ki lo nivna bayit l'Shem Hashem ad hayamim hahem." In the meantime, the people were sacrificing on temporary altar. Abama is a backyard altar, basically. Since there was no temple, there was no restriction on making your own altar and bringing sacrifices at will. So you could go to the top of your roof, make an altar, and bring korbanos. That was the scene over there. Verse number 3, Vayehav Shlomo et Hashem lalechet b'chukot David aviv. Shlomo loved Hashem, meaning he served Hashem from love. It wasn't a fear of punishment. It was a deep yearning to connect to him, which is the highest form of service. Shlomo Melech had achieved one of the highest goals a human can achieve. He served Hashem out of love, to follow the ways of David, meaning he followed his father's instructions. Rak babamotu mezabeach umaktir. Except for Rak, which is like an exception, he was also using these temporary altars to bring sacrifices to Hashem. Which sounds like, if there's one criticism, it's this. Shlomo served Hashem from love, except that he would bring sacrifices on temporary altars.
Rock
Sounds like it's a bad.
Pardon me.
Yeah.
Rock also means rock also means only.
Yes. Only. It's, in English, it could be except or only. So in this case, it'd be like only that. The idea is it's limiting something. Shlomo was great, only there's this one fact that he had, which was a critique, which is that he would bring sacrifices on personal altars. What's the issue with that? So the Radak and the Ralbag, they both say that the personal altars were the way that idol worshippers did it. The ideal, as we've seen already from the times of the desert, the ideal is that there should be one centralized place of worship. You make a mishkan, a tabernacle, where everybody can come and serve Hashem. And eventually it's going to be the temple, where everybody can come to that centralized place and serve Hashem exclusively through that altar. Babamot, temporary altars, is whenever you get the urge, you just go to your roof, you build something. You're parking, you're hiking or something at a park. You get an urge, you build an altar and you serve Hashem. That is the way that idolaters serve. Interesting. It's like an as-needed basis. As you need your deity, you serve him. And this form of service was not ideal towards Hashem. It's a very fascinating point. The Ralbag here is kind of in line with the Rambam, who says that sacrificing in general was like a carryover from paganism, that Hashem was trying to wean the Jewish people off of paganism. So he said, I want you to sacrifice to me instead. The Ralbag is saying, though, that the real problem is doing it at will in these random altars. The ideal way is one centralized place, and that's what was lacking in Shlomo's service in the beginning of his reign. Very interesting kind of discussion. And here's yeah, go ahead.
Doesn't that sort of take a jab at the story of the golden calf?
Very good. Very good. I would say there's a deep connection over there. I would say it's like a nice thing that you want to connect to Hashem in any place. So I'll build an altar on my roof. I build it in the backyard, at the parking lot of a giant. I'm building altars everywhere. It's a great thing, isn't it? But there's a certain lack of discipline
Yeah.
that it implies. Like you can't hold out to serve Hashem in the ideal way. I got to do it right here, right now. It's a certain lack of maturity or discipline, and which was the failing at the golden calf as well. Moshe said, "Wait for me," and they said, "No, we can't. We got to do it this way. We got to do it now." They couldn't hold back that urge. Perhaps you can suggest a deep link. An interesting Aramaic tidbit here. Targum Yonatan says that Shlomo was mezabeach umaktir. Usually, maktir, the word means to raise up smoke. So it probably should have been understood as bringing sacrifices. The Targum Yonatan says he brought incense. And that's something that's very unusual, to bring incense on a private altar. It's just a fascinating tidbit. We'll keep going though. Okay. Verse number 4. Now, in addition to the private altars, there was the Bama Hagdolah, the great altar. Not necessarily because of its size, but its history. This is the altar that Moshe made in the desert. This is the altar of the Mishkan. And over there, Shlomo brought 1,000 sacrifices on that particular altar. That's the main altar, the carryover from the Mishkan. Shlomo brought 1,000 sacrifices. Chazal seem to understand that he did this in a single day, 1,000 sacrifices, a tremendous display of submission to Hashem. The Radak suggests perhaps al derech hapshat that maybe it means like in total, over the course of X amount of time, his sacrifices equaled 1,000. But Chazal understand that it was in one day he did 1,000, which I guess he was engaged in some deep form of service. And it was like a sort of leveling up, because the very next verse after he brings these 1,000 sacrifices is Hashem appears to him. Number 5, B'givon yira Hashem el Shlomo b'chalom halayla. Hashem appears to Solomon, to Shlomo, in a dream, which is either a very low form of prophecy or something just below prophecy. Vayomer Elohim sh'al ma eten lach. Ask anything you want, and I will give it to you. Quite an offer, a blank check from God. You fill in the amount, I'll give it to you. What does Shlomo want to ask from Hashem? Shlomo asks, says Shlomo, Ata asita et avdecha David, avi chesed gadol. You've done great kindness with my father. He walked before you with righteousness and a straight heart. And you've kept your promise to him, and you've given him, Vatiten lo bein yoshev al kiso kayom ezen. You've given him a son that sits on his throne today. So Shlomo opens in a tremendously humble way. Hashem says, I'll give you anything. What do you want? And his first instinct is to respond with an admission of the tremendous kindness and how beholden he is to Hashem. Amazing expression of humility. And it's noteworthy that this is in a dream. A dream, you can hardly control what's going on over there, right? It's not with his conscious mind where he can maybe put a mask on or present himself as humble. A dream is when your mind, your guards are down and only your innermost thoughts are flowing out without any holding back. And so the innermost reaction of Shlomo was an expression of humility and gratitude to Hashem. Number 7. And now Hashem, V'ata Hashem Elohai, my God, Ata imlachta et avdecha tachat David avdi, you have made me king under my father. And look at the way he refers to himself, V'anuchi na'ar katon, I am a young boy. Lo edat seit tavo, I don't know how to come and go, which means I don't have deep wisdom. I'm a young boy. First of all, Shlomo was a young boy. He was 12 years old at this point, or maybe 15 at most. But what's amazing is David, before he died, when Shlomo was 11 or 12, David said to Shlomo, you are wise, and I trust your wisdom to carry out the justice on these people. So Shlomo was recognized as a wise person. But here he is admitting to God that I'm just a small boy. I don't really know anything, and he's going to ask for wisdom. So Yaakov Kamenetsky says, there's no greater sign of a wise person than one who doesn't think that he's wise. Yeah. The moment you say, I know it, I know, you can trust me, I'm the guy, that is a big red flag of a lack of wisdom. So here you see Shlomo's wisdom in action, appreciating there's always more to know and you're always just small, and there's an infinite level of wisdom you can achieve. So he says to Hashem, I am young, I don't know how to come, how to go, which can mean in learning and war, it can mean many different things. And I sit amongst your nation, a great nation, Am Rav, meaning very big in their numbers and in their needs. Asher lo yimaneh v'lo yisfer merov, they cannot be numbered. So here's his request in verse number 9. V'natata le'avdecha leiv shomea, give your servant a listening heart, so that I can judge your nation, to understand bein tov le'ra, between good and evil. Ki mi yuchal lishpot et amcha kaved hazeh, who can judge this heavy nation? Please give me the wisdom to judge your nation. What a beautiful, again, the inner expressions of Shlomo during his dream. He had a blank check from the creator of the world, and he said, please give me the wisdom to do my job right, to judge your nation. He says, because your nation is very heavy. Heavy could mean there are so many different cases, like it's hard to keep up. But the Radak, I believe, is the one who says, heavy in the repercussions. If I mess up a judgment between Jews, it's so severe and so significant. Meaning it's bad enough to maybe make a mistake in a general judgment, but when it's amongst your people, the Jews, where everything is high stakes, that's even more severe. So it's heavy to judge your nation. So that was Shlomo's request. Just give me wisdom, nothing else. Wisdom to judge your people. Vaytav hadavar b'nei Hashem. And this was a good thing in the eyes of Hashem, that he asked for this thing only. So Hashem says to him in verse number 11, since you asked this, and you did not ask a long life, you didn't ask for wealth, you didn't ask success in war, all you asked for was understanding and judgment. Behold, I am granting your request, and I will give you a leiv chacham benavon, a heart that is wise and understanding. Asher kamocha lo haya lefanecha, a very interesting line. There was none like you beforehand. Ve'acharecha lo yakum kamocha, there will be none like you afterwards. Shlomo is unique, singular in his wisdom. Now that is a controversial statement, because we Jews, we have quite a history, and there's one person, if you're going to put him above everybody else, that would be Moshe Rabbeinu. The Torah says, nobody was like Moshe, lo kam kamohu, v'acharav lo yeh, nobody ever stood like Moshe. So Shlomo, it says, was greater than Moshe? Is that indeed so? So the Radak asks this question, and he proposes two answers. His first answer is, no, this is just referring to kings. Amongst kings, there is none like you before or after. You will be the greatest, wisest king that ever lived. Moshe, he wasn't a king, he was a leader. And that he's not on this list. And he is indeed greater than Shlomo. The second answer of the Radak is that indeed Shlomo was greater than Moshe in his wisdom of this world. When it comes to spiritual knowledge and maybe the depth and understanding in the Torah itself, Moshe had no equal. Moshe was indeed greater. But when it comes to the knowledge of the physical world, etc., that, in fact, Shlomo had more knowledge than Moshe, more wisdom. Very interesting. It's interesting considering the fact that the knowledge of the natural world flows from knowledge of the Torah. It's not like two different disciplines. In the Torah is embedded everything. So it's interesting, you could suggest that Moshe had the deepest Torah knowledge, but he was lesser in physical knowledge. You should think you can't split the two. There are many stories about that, but I don't want to hold it here for too long. Somebody asking a question? I can't tell. Oh, we're good. Okay.
I have one.
Yeah, please.
Was Moshe? Moshe was a teacher and a leader.
Yes.
No question. But was Moshe a wise person in that he frequently went to Hashem to discuss the issue?
You're saying, yeah.
And it's not a negative.
Right.
It's because it's
So,
something. To me, wisdom is something conveyed by others. So
what do you mean by that?
you don't say, I am a wise person.
Yes.
Somebody else may say I'm a wise person, but I'm not. say
You
that.
can't claim the title for yourself, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And but in the general sense, Moshe was always going to Hashem to help with the decisions or whatever it, was.
I hear. So
So,
Moshe, that's an interesting point. So it happens that Moshe has a sort of a disadvantage, if you could call it that, and that the Torah had not been given yet, meaning he was in the process of revealing the Torah. So
right,
when an unknown case came up, he said, I had to say to Hashem, okay, now I need to reveal this part of the Torah. Please let us know. And Shlomo is on his shoulders after the entire Torah has been revealed. Now Shlomo can climb its steps and he can't go to Hashem for more. It's all there. So
right.
it's like different generations. It's hard to compare them in that regard. That's a very interesting point.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just the contrast between Shlomo and Moshe is fascinating, especially on the heels of last week's Parsha. It says that the Jewish people should bring you, Moshe, they should bring you the red cow. And the red cow, the red heifer, that mitzvah of purifying the dead and at the same time causing those who purify to become impure, that is the ultimate paradox and secret that Chazal say only Moshe understood fully, or understood the depth of it. That's why it says they should bring to you, Moshe, this cow, because you're the only one who can grasp it. So there you see that Shlomo had a wisdom over I keep saying Shlomo, that Moshe had a wisdom over Shlomo. That only Moshe understood the secret of the cow, whereas Shlomo didn't. So the Radak here is struggling and saying, so it's either on the level of kings or he was higher than Moshe in the area of natural wisdom. That's where we're holding it. Okay, let's keep going. Now in verse number 13, Hashem says, and I'll do you even more than what you asked for. Agam asher lo sha'alta natati lecha. I will give you even what you didn't ask for. Osher gam kavod. I will give you wealth and honor. Asher lo haya chamocha ish b'melachim kol yamecha. There was none like you in all your days of being a king. Now you can ask, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky quotes a wise person who asked, isn't this not a good thing? The Torah says that the king should limit his wealth. Lo yarbeh. He should not increase his wealth too much, lest his heart stray. So is Hashem here actually handicapping Shlomo by promising him tremendous wealth? It's a good question. And so the response is either that Hashem will make the entire nation so wealthy that Shlomo's wealth will necessarily increase above theirs, not more than necessary, not too much, but more than the nation, and that's still within the limits. Alternatively, it's not Shlomo's personal bank account that's going to be increasing; it's the national wealth. I mean, like the gold reserves of the Israelites will increase abundantly. So when Hashem is promising Shlomo wealth, he means you as the leader of the people, not in your personal bank account, but for the entire nation, there's going to be tremendous wealth. Okay, and honor, and then this one's on condition in verse 14. Im telech bidrachaya, and if you walk in my ways, then I will give you lengthy days. The other two are not conditional. You'll be wealthy and have honor regardless. But lengthy days, if you want a long life as a king, then you must follow my ways. And in fact, the moment Shlomo veered at the end of his life, when his heart went astray because of too many wives, he died. He died at 52. So because the length of days, that was conditional. Okay, so this is the dream that Shlomo has following the 1,000 sacrifices. Speaking of 1,000 wives, yeah. Vayikat Shlomo v'hinei chalom. And Shlomo wakes up and behold, it was a dream. Of course, yeah, it was a dream. What does he think? So a simple meaning is, sometimes a dream could be so real that when you wake up, you say, oh, wow, that was a dream. V'hinei chalom. And that is actually a sign, apparently, that is a sign. If a dream is so vivid and feels so real, that is a sign of something true that the dream is conveying. Rashi says even more than this. Shlomo woke up and he realized the dream was true because it had already been fulfilled. He woke up in the morning and he could suddenly understand the language of the birds. And he could suddenly understand all these things that he didn't before. He woke up with a new wisdom that he never had before. Rashi, in the language of Rashi, Shomea of mitzavtzef u'mevin lo shano. He heard a bird chirping, he understood what it meant. He heard a dog barking, he understood what the dog was saying. So he realized that the drew had actually been fulfilled, and so the next thing is to make a party to celebrate this promise from Hashem. The Ralbag uses Shlomo as his proof against Aristotle. You know, Aristotle apparently had a book called Chush ve'muchash, the senses and that which is sensed. If you want the Latin, de sensu et sensibili, that's the name of Aristotle's book. The Ralbag, one of the great Rishonim, he wrote a commentary on Aristotle's book. And apparently in Aristotle's book, he writes that prophecy is when you maximize your brain power, and when you plumb the depths of wisdom. Prophecy is like the highest you can achieve with your natural intelligence. When you clarify everything and you get to as highest point as you could possibly get, that's prophecy. And the Ralbag from Shlomo Melech proves, no. Prophecy is after you have clarified and done as much as a human brain can do. Prophecy is still above that. Prophecy is when something comes from the outside that you cannot possibly attain on your own. When there's a wisdom that comes in that you did not work for, you didn't do enough to achieve this, and yet you're receiving it. Just like Shlomo Melech, he wakes up, he suddenly has wisdom that he never knew about. He never worked for it. He never went through the process of attaining it. There is something that can be inserted from the outside. And that is one of the basic tenets of Judaism, that there's such a thing as Hashem communicating with human beings and relaying information that they could not attain on their own. Prophecy. Hashem gave the Torah to Moshe. Moshe didn't think about it himself. Hashem gave it to him. And so too, all the prophets, they were receiving wisdom from above. Just like here, Shlomo was receiving wisdom from above that he did not work for. Yeah, there's I'll just mention, just a quick nugget. It's known that the Gra, the Gaon of Vilna, Eliyahu Kramer, who lived in the 1700s, his student writes that there were many times when my teacher, he would be approached by various angels and spiritual forces who wanted to reveal to him the Torah. And the Gra, the Gaon of Vilna, would always send him away and say, no, I didn't work for it. I don't want anything that I didn't work for. I will study the Torah, and whatever Hashem wants to reveal to me through his Torah, I'll accept. But to just get a favor and somebody show me the answers, I don't want. There's a certain danger in unearned wisdom. And the Gra was trying to avoid it. If you didn't work for it, what is it worth? I only want what I worked for. And here we see Shlomo asking for that which he did not work for. He's asking for a wisdom that he didn't attain on his own. And Hashem grants him wisdom beyond anything he could have imagined. But as much as he worked, he didn't work to achieve that. So isn't it interesting? When do we accept unearned wisdom? And when do we say, no, thank you, I'll try to figure it out myself? It's an interesting thing for you to consider. Okay, so Shlomo wakes up, he has this amazing wisdom, and now comes one of the most famous stories. In chapter 1 still, chapter 3, verse number 16. Then came two women before Shlomo, and they stood before him in judgment. They're referred to as Anashim Zonot. Zonah, we've had this with Rachav, the Zonah back in Yoshua. It could either mean that she provides food, or that she was mufkeret, that she was like a harlot, a prostitute. She would prostitute herself. So these two women, either they were immoral or they provided food. Interesting how the word shares a definition. Anyway, they come before Shlomo and they have this argument. One woman said, my master, this woman and I live in the same house, and we both gave birth within 3 days of each other. All right, I gave birth, and 3 days later, she gives birth. And there's nobody else living in the house. I guess they don't have husbands living at home. Maybe the husbands are away or they left them before they gave birth. So it's just me and this lady. 9 months pregnant, I give birth, then she gives birth. We're the only ones at home. And her son died because she accidentally crushed him in her sleep. And in the middle of the night, she came into my bed. She transferred the children she took my living son and she placed her dead son in my bed. And I woke up to nurse my son in the morning, and I see that he was dead. And when I examined him, I saw that it's not actually my son. So she took my son. And the other woman speaks up in verse number 22, "Vatomer ha'isha acheret lo chi b'ni hachai v'nei chamet." No, mine is the living son and yours is the dead son. And the other one said, "No, yours is dead." And they went back and forth. V'tidaberna lifnei hamelech. The end of verse 22 is, "And the women spoke before the king," which means that there are more claims and there was more back and forth than the prophet cares to share with us. They probably said all kinds of things like, he looks like me, he has my eyes. No, he doesn't, he has my, right? That all their arguments were laid out and they went back and forth in front of Shlomo HaMelech. So Shlomo in verse number 23 repeats their claims. Zot omeret ze b'nei achai uvnei chamet, v'zot omeret lo chi b'nei chamet uvnei achai. He repeats their claim to them, and for some reason the prophet reveals that to us. Why is that significant? So the Talmud learns from Shlomo that it is essential for a judge to first repeat the claims of each litigant before judging the case. He should first say over each one's argument. What's the significance? Part of it is the loser in the case will inevitably think, yeah, the judge is wise, and with all due respect, I think he didn't understand where I was coming from. If he only understood my claim, then I would have won. So in order to avoid that type of banter after a case has been decided, there's a halacha, there's a Jewish law that the judge should first repeat each side to show them that he understood them. And then he should judge the case, therefore minimizing the disgruntledness. So the king says, "Bring me a sword." They bring him a sword. Vayomer HaMelech, and the king said, "Gizru et hayelad achai lishnaim." Cut the living child in half, and give half to one and half to the other. And the woman, who was the real mother, said, now this is the reaction, her mercy boiled over al banah, and she said, "No, Bia, don't please my master, just give the other lady the child, and don't kill the boy." And the other woman was saying, "No, cut him in half. No, nobody should get him." Vayan HaMelech vayomer knula et hayalud achai. Shlomo said, "Give that one who said, 'Don't cut him,' give her the living child, and don't kill him, ki imo, because she is the mother." And all of the Jewish people heard at Hamishpat, Asher Shafat HaMelech, and everybody heard about this judgment that Shlomo judged. Vayir'u mipnei HaMelech, and they feared, they had awe from Shlomo. Kir'u ki chokhmat elim b'kirbo, they saw the great wisdom of God in Shlomo's midst, the lasot mishpat, the ability to do justice. So Shlomo says, "Cut the child in half," and the real mother says, "No, please don't, give the other lady the child." And Shlomo says, she's the mother. And everybody hears about this case, and they're all blown away by the divine wisdom of Shlomo. Okay, so
do we know
yeah,
which one is the one who spoke first?
so the
Which
Navi
one?
says, one second. No, it's not clear. It's not clear. Why do you ask?
Because it would be an interesting observation about who started the trouble, who said, "Let's take this to the king." Is it the one who was right, or is it the one who was wrong?
Right.
Why? Like,
Okay.
which one spoke? One of them has to speak first, of course, but is the one who jumps ahead and says to the king, tells the story in all the detail that we first hear, is that the one who's telling the truth, or is that the one who's lying?
I hear. Interesting question. I mean, one of them will have to speak first inevitably. The Ralbag understands that the liar was the one who had the child. As the story went, right, she's the one who actually was holding on to the child when they came to the court. There's also implication in the Rishonim that they had gone through several courts beforehand. They had gone through the lower justice system and they couldn't settle it. So they were just going to leave it up to to them to figure out or like leave it undecided. And they came to Shlomo, either hoping that he'll exercise some kingly override to decide the case, or at the very least, he'll take the boy into the royal court and like raise him himself if they can't settle this case, something like that. So like it sounds like this was a case that was going on for a while until they finally came to Shlomo, because the king doesn't rule every case, but this apparently was a severe one. The question is, we don't have too long to spend on the details here. In fact, we should really wrap it up for Mariv. But what is his profound wisdom over here? In Warsaw, there was a case in the newspaper of Yaakov Kamenetsky shared that a poor lady and a rich lady hung their laundry on the same line. And at one point, the poor lady claimed that all the expensive clothes are mine. And the junky clothes, those are the rich ladies. And they came to court. So the judge, the Jewish judge, he asked them both to leave the room. He put all the clothes in a pile, the bad clothes and the good clothes. And he also asked his own wife, the judge asked his own wife, to add some of her own nice clothing. Then he calls in the poor lady and he says to her, please select your clothes from this pile. So she collects all the nice clothes, including the judge's wife's. And then the rich lady comes in afterwards. They rejumble the clothes. The rich lady comes in and he says, please choose your clothes. And since they were actually her clothes, she chose her own and not the rabbi's wife's. They said, okay, it's clear that it's their clothing, and that's how he judged the case. Very clever. Very clever. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky asked, are we to say that the wisdom of this judge in Warsaw is as great as the wisdom of King Solomon? It just sounds like a nice, sharp idea. But what is the profound wisdom of Shlomo Melech that's being expressed in this case? It was a good idea, okay, like scare the real mother and then she'll agree. But is there really like such a depth of the wisdom here? So he suggests that in Shlomo Melech's case, this was a tremendous gamble. He is the king, and you don't overturn the judgment of a king. So if he were to say, cut the boy in half, and both mothers were to say, okay, they would literally go and kill the boy. Because for a king, there's no saying, oh, no, I didn't actually mean it. The king couldn't do that. To preserve the integrity of the king, they would actually go through and kill the boy. So unless Shlomo was so sure that this would play out the way he intended, he would have never suggested such an idea. And that's a testament to his profound wisdom. It's not just that he thought of a clever way to spot the real mother. He was so sure that she would reveal herself in this way, that things would play out this way. He had such a deep understanding of people that he was willing to put the boy's life on the line. He realized it was not going to be a risk because he was so confident in his deep wisdom that it would pan out this way. Now, a fascinating point from Yaakov Kamenetsky, which hopefully gives us something. Okay, we're going to wrap it up here. I'm obliged to end with the following joke. There was two women came in front of the rabbi, and they're both fighting over a boy. And this one says, he's my son-in-law. And that one says, he's my son-in-law. And they're both arguing. Both women are arguing over the son-in-law. So the rabbi says, okay, just cut the boy in half and you'll divide him. And one woman said, no, don't cut him in half, just give it to her. And the other one said, yeah, let's cut him in half. And the rabbi said, that's the real mother-in-law. All right, have a wonderful night.
There, that's what ungives Shlomo HaMelech with 1,000 wives. 1,000 mothers-in-law.
Very good, very good. Okay, excellent.
Yeah, that's why he died early, because 1,000 wives hard enough with one or two.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too.
Thank you.